Okay. All righty. Good morning, everyone. We would like to call this meeting of Housing, Urban Development and Zoning Committee to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Present.
Alderman Browning.
Present.
Chair Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
We have 5 present. You have a quorum.
Okay, great. I'll accept the motion for the approval of the minutes from Wednesday, September 20th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Ready.
Madam, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Chair Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
All right, we'll move down the agenda. Board bills for review. The first one, we like to take rather non-committee members first. So we'll reverse it a bit and go down to item number 2, Board Bill 123. Alderwoman Kara Spencer, are you available?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first apologize for tuning in outside of the office here this morning. I had an unexpected flat tire, so I'm doing what I can here this morning. But Board Bill 123 is a bill that's very, very needed. What it does is it authorizes the city of St. Louis to do a couple things to shore up and make safe very large buildings. We started with buildings over 5,000 square feet. Initially, I had started with 1 million square feet, but in talking with the director of operations for the city of St. Louis, Nancy Cross, we dropped that to 500,000 to include a few more buildings that we think might need this. We've seen, particularly with the Railway Exchange, a lot of breaches, a lot of folks breaking into the building, and a fire, unfortunately, just last week. So what this will do, the city of St. Louis, I have to commend the building division on this. They've been acting extremely responsively to breaches to that building, boarding it up, but people, industrious folks with power tools are continuing to break in. So, and of course, I want to commend the fire department on Friday for reacting so very quickly and getting that fire under control. That being said, what 123 does is authorizes the city of St. Louis to put in a stronger set of barriers, steel plates, as opposed to just plywood. We know we can't do this for every building. It's very, very expensive. But what we can do with this board bill is not only put those in, but it authorizes the city to bill the building owner for that work. The bill also authorizes the city of St. Louis to hire security for these large buildings, and again, authorizes the city to bill the owner for those. We know the Railway Exchange in particular had security hired by the building owner until about midsummer. At that time, the building just really spiraled out of control. And so those security measures were effective, and we want to be able to put them back into place. Again, I want to commend the building division for not only acting really quickly, they're already taking action on this and getting those steel plates, which we can do, but this bill will allow us to then bill the owner for that work. And with that, I ask for the committee's favorable consideration on Board Bill 123, and of course, we'll take questions.
Thank you so much. Alderwoman Spencer, do you have any speakers for Board Bill 123?
I don't. I will say that in getting this introduced, communicated with Nancy Cross, as I mentioned, Matt Moak of our city councilor's office, and of course Frank Oswald from the building division, and can attest to their support of it.
Okay, that was that was going to be one of my questions. So thank you for answering that early on. Okay, I'll go through the committee here. Alderman Shane Cone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was curious, Alderwoman Spencer, and I don't know if this would be a more appropriate question for the city councilor's office, but did we, during the creation of this bill, this seems to be basically adopting a new building code. I mean, the
So-
bill is 200 and some odd pages long.
That's right. So you may remember, Shane, the city took a really progressive step in adopting the building codes without many amendments, just I think 2 years ago. And that was a really, really good step for the city of St. Louis to take under the leadership of our building commissioner, Frank Oswald. What this does, we did make a couple of additions and changes, but very minimal to those building codes at that time. This adds in two little pieces to the existing building code. So we're not adopting a new building code. Everything stays the same. We're just adding these two little pieces to the existing building code as put forward by those federal building code experts. I'm blanking on the name of the organization that puts those national building codes in place or wrote them essentially.
Okay. So, and I see in the ordinance portion of the board bill that it refers to a specific section of the code. So I'll have to go back and look at that real quick. But the other comment or question that has come up from constituents and others, which was a little bit out of left field for me. This does not have any type of impact on eminent domain of these properties. This is simply allowing for the city to address the board up of these larger buildings and charging the property owner for the cost of that.
Yes, actually, and in theory, we could do these things anyway. You know, and in talking with Matt Mope, there was and Nancy Cross, I should be clear, both of these folks have been very involved in this. There is some thought, and I would add Frank Oswald to that as well, that we could do the steel plating, and actually SLDC and the building division have found funding to do that steel plating. It's very, very, very expensive, but this again gives us the authorization, the sure authorization under an ordinance that we would be able to charge the building owner for that work. So, you know, it really, really makes it very clear. And where it is in the building code, you know, I took some guidance from Matt Moak on that to make sure, you know, within the building code that we're not messing with anything existing. So it's part of that building code, you know, chapter and the section within there that relates to violations. So you know, it's just adding a subsection within the existing building code without changing or deleting anything that already exists in there, Alderman Cone.
Okay. And then lastly, Alderwoman Spencer, and this might be a question for the city councilor's office, but are we legally able to do that underneath the charter to essentially bill someone for work that the city has done on a private property?
Yes, we've done it several times actually, especially when a building is unsafe. So under our existing building code, you know, yes, I mean, there's been several instances when, you know, the building division determines the building needs to come down, demolishes it, and then puts the cost of that on as a lien on the property. So it's not very common, but it certainly happens every year, and we've been doing it for a long time. And to answer your question more clearly on the eminent domain, because I can understand your confusion there, because I've got a separate bill that does move forward eminent domain on the Railway Exchange building in particular. This has nothing to do with that at all. They're completely separate matters.
So would this, I guess my question is, I understand the building division for the purposes of demolition, because of the imminent safety hazards associated with the buildings are able to move forward with emergency demolitions and things of that nature. And then once demolition occurs, it can also be added to their tax roll. If they don't pay their taxes, then it can, you know, go into, you know, tax sale and things of that nature. But for the purposes of improvements or boarding up. So, because I don't believe that we pay or we charge people for board up costs, like if there's a vacant building. To my knowledge,
we do. Yes, we do actually. In fact, I put forward a bill just, I think 2.5 years ago. So we do invoice them for board ups. What we weren't doing before was charging them for police escort when a building is vacant, or there's people living in it. So I put forward a bill that has been very successful in helping to add the cost of the police escort to the board ups, because it costs the city a lot of money to do that, to have that. So we do that. We do put those as liens on, and there are several instances where we have made a building safer, either through shoring up a building site or something like that, not just demolition, but and invoice the owner for that.
Okay. I see that you're also at St. Louis Bread Company. I failed to eat breakfast this morning, so if you have any goodwill about you and would like to pick up a egg sandwich for me, I would really appreciate it. But I don't have any on this board.
I have a flat tire right now, Alderman Shane Cohn, so I would be walking it home. But I would be happy. It would take a while, but I would be happy to do that for you if they take out.
Well, if you want to text me, I can also pick you up later if you need to. Happy to offer a ride.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for indulging me on the questions.
All right, Alderwoman Switzer.
Thank you so much. This smells really interesting, and I appreciate you putting it forward and explaining it. I see in the bill that it says, and we've talked about this a little bit, all costs incurred by the city to secure such building or structure shall be paid for by the owner of the building of the structure. Are you suggesting this to be a fine, a lien on their tax bill?
It'd be invoiced. I mean, so, that's why we're starting off with just really, really large buildings, Alderwoman Schweitzer, that pose an enormous threat, safety hazard to the city. And so those safety measures would be determined by the building commissioner and be assessed as a.
Yeah, I'm really asking specifically about the process for how this payment moves through the system. I know that with some of the funds through ARPA, the building division is doing securing of buildings that are, I'm not sure if they have the size laid out, but that are in need of being secured and brought up sort of minimal acceptable standards and that is being charged, and I believe it's being put on their tax bill. So I was just wondering, exactly how they were being charged, because a lien, it's just interesting to me how it actually would go through to encourage the people to pay it, so that the city isn't sitting on these, large unpaid fees or fines.
Yes, I mean, this would follow the building division's process of assessing other fines. So, in the same way, when they're charging for the board ups and that sort of thing, it would be assessed as a fine. If they don't pay it, then it would be within a certain amount of time, it would be placed on the property as a lien.
Okay. I think
go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting how it works and how it all moves through. How much do you anticipate the police presence cost to be for one of these buildings? I mean, what does that even look like?
I don't know the answer to that. We assessed it, I want to say, the fiscal, I want to say there was a charge per hour that was assessed. Alderwoman Schweitzer, I can't speak to that. One thing I can say, if the committee got concerns, that what we could do is make this simply applicable to the one building that's really we're going to be working to start on this with, and moving through this to see how this works. I mean, I'm comfortable with that because the building owners have shown themselves not to be a partner any longer with the city of St. Louis in shoring up this building and keeping it safe. So the intent here was really to get this process moving on the railway exchange and be able to deploy these security measures without burdening the city with having to pay for it. And then seeing how it works, and then contemplating whether or not we would want to do this to other really large buildings should their building owners, be a problem. You know, we see like the Millennium Hotel is also a really big building, but those property owners have security measures in place. They have a security company that's fairly effective in keeping people out. And that's a good thing. I don't approve of the vacancy of that building, but it's not an imminent threat like the railway exchange has become.
Right. Yeah, I do see the type of impact is it laid out in the fiscal note. I just didn't see a specific cost.
Yeah, I mean, the board up, I will tell you with the steel, I mean, I don't know specifics, but we're guessing, you know, $150,000, $200,000. So this is no small amount of money, and I don't want to saddle the city with it. For, you know, and you know, but I don't want to not have it be effectively boarded up, you know. So this is a way to really make sure that we are holding the building owner accountable for it.
Yeah, I definitely see the work for the, you know, in terms of the just cost benefit analysis that, you know, goes into something like this when you have knowledge that it's going to take the city outputting a lot of funds in order to do something that the owner should be doing. And then how do you get that owner to actually pay up? And there, you know, sometimes it can take a really long time to make that happen. That doesn't mean that it's not a good use of the city's funds when, you know, there's so many other funds that go into it. You know, if the building catches on fire, or if there's a, you know, a big incident that occurs, or if it falls, you know, there's so much to think about in terms of costs if you don't do something like this. So yeah, those are my questions for now. I will yield back. Thank you for taking the time to answer them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Alderman Brownie?
I think Alderwoman Schweitzer really asked what I was curious about, and the answer kind of came out there that it's about 150 to 200K per building. I don't disagree that this is a really important thing to do here. These buildings have an outsized impact, and we all, many of us can probably think of at least one building in our ward that is similarly a problem, but the railway exchange is something that even I get questions about, even in Ward 9. So I absolutely understand the urgency around this. I am similarly concerned, though, that we are taking on a significant amount of more or less debt, and that we're spending money that's not going to get paid back readily. But I also recognize that, you know, the cost of not taking action is going to possibly be greater. So I think at the end of the day, this is probably necessary, and wouldn't mind limiting the scope to the railway exchange to see that it is effective and that we don't end up with ballooning costs. But I also know that our building division will be, you know, sparing in how they apply this. They're not going to go willy-nilly through the city and start slapping metal on everything. But I guess my question for you is, are we ready to act? If we pass this through quickly, are we ready to act and secure the railway exchange as a priority? Is the building division on board with that?
Yeah, the building division's already getting quotes on that, Alderman Browning. And I do feel confident that we will get a path to getting reimbursed, simply because we're going to be moving forward with eminent domain and other pieces here that will provide a path to resolution on this building. And the city should be made whole on these things. Absolutely. I mean, if nothing else, you know, through that process, we should get reimbursed. I know we also have philanthropic partners in the community that are willing to step forward if need be. So, you know, the building division has been a partner in this, absolutely, and they recognize that we're going to have to do something. I mean, the costs associated with a big fire there or some other really disastrous activity would be certainly greater than what it would cost to board it up.
Okay, thank you. I think that wraps up my questions. I appreciate you bringing this forward and taking action on this building.
Yeah, I have to give credit to Matt Moak and others who really came, with this concept and the partnership here, so. And of course, like I said, the building division, this isn't mine alone by any stretch of the imagination.
Of course, our building division are a bunch of great people and they do hard work to keep the city safe.
Thank you. All right, Vice Chair Sanye.
Hi, Alderwoman Spencer. A lot of my questions have been asked already. So really, I just want to join in and commend you for doing this. I think it's great whenever we think of how we can use our specific positions to impact issues. And what I like about policy and legislation that does it is it can begin to set up a process and a system to handle that rather than us individually having to put out every fire ourselves within our wards. I would just lift up, definitely looking into accountability, because I know you said right now is kind of accountability as far as making sure that we collect the funds. Because I know right now you said it's like sending over an invoice. I like Alderwoman Schweitzer's idea of, tying it to their taxes or something like that so that it comes up and they're kind of more obligated to, just because for me, I found that a lot of times when a property or location gets to be in that level of a challenge in the community, they're very responsive. So whatever we can do to have as much accountability and make sure that the intent of the bill plays out would be my only note.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sonia. Yeah, this will be attached as a lien. I mean, I want to say that the city is going to be taking this action anyway. So this is just a mechanism to make sure that we're getting reimbursed for this work. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if we just send out a letter for the cost, that's one thing, but making sure that it's attached as a lien, and I have confidence that the building division will be able to do that so that there's a mechanism to getting reimbursed in the long term. I appreciate that.
All right. Does anybody have any follow-up questions? I did have a couple of questions. One about the policing, the security piece. Would that be our police? What do you envision that being our police? Would they be pulled from other areas for this building? Or is that a secondary company or overtime? How does that look?
The way I envision this, the building owner had security. I mean, in an ideal world, Chairwoman, having this in place and telling the building owner, look, you get that security company back in place, or we're going to hire one and invoice you, and having them do that work themselves would be ideal. That would be the ideal solution. But I don't envision it being police security. I do think that the security company that they had in place up until midsummer was pretty effective. And it did not involve policing. So, it's just a security company measure that I think could be just as effective here in this case, keeping people out of the building.
Okay. Okay, and when you say invoice, would they invoice the city and then it'd be addressed by that lien, or are you saying invoice directly to the owner of the property?
It would be, this would allow us to hire a security company like the building owner should be doing, and then invoice that, and then charge them for that security company's work and in keeping the building free of folks.
Okay, and so I heard you and some of our other colleagues mention it, even though we know that there are large buildings like this and this kind of disrepair all over in more than just the Railway Exchange building, but you mentioned possibly bringing it down to just the Railway Exchange building. So do we need to bring this bill back, or do you need to work on a committee sub?
I think all we would need to do is change the square footage back to 1 million. The Railway Exchange is 1.2 million square feet. So we could easily just make an amendment to do that.
I saw a couple of hands go up, and in the meantime, maybe we can reach out to Lou and someone to see how that would go forward. I'll take Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I thought I heard you say, Alderwoman Spencer, that the administration wanted it to be a lower number just to allow it to be used in other buildings in the future. I heard, was that what you had said, or did I miss that?
That was through a conversation with Nancy Cross. absolutely, that's where the number dropped from 1 million to 500,000 at her recommendation. You know, I don't know that it would, you know, I don't believe there's any intention right now to do that, you know, to do it beyond that, but that was the thinking. I would be open to either way. I think if this works well here, you know, this board could consider expanding it, or we could leave it as is. Like I said, I don't think there's any intention of doing this necessarily, unless because other buildings of that size aren't posing the same threat that we're seeing at the Railway Exchange.
Well, like everything that we pass here at the board, it always ends up coming down to implementation. And it sounds like the building division has a plan for this building that, you know, involves some of the things that are in this bill. But it would seem like it could be something that could be useful in the future for other buildings that, you know, wouldn't have to go through a whole legislative process again to begin. So, you know, I see the idea of limiting it to one building as to, you know, have more control over how it can be used, but I do think that it could be something that could be helpful in other situations. So yeah, thank you for answering that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Sanye.
My comments were similar to Alderwoman Schweitzer's. I would like to leave it, you know, applicable to buildings as possible, because my other concern is, you know, the building did have to get to an emergency state before, and now you still have to go through this legislation process to get it through. So my concern would be that we might be in a situation where we need this for another building. We've already had an example of it working well, but now, you know, that it would have to go through the legislation process again, which could take weeks or months. So I think that it might be good to leave it in a way that's applicable to as many places as possible, so that we're not having to come back in emergency and follow the process. And then we'll have the model of how this works to decide whether or not, you know, other alders would like to use the process in their wards.
Oh.
That's it. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, so it looks like, so you're gonna change from that direction, Alderwoman Spencer, you wanna just,
I mean, I am amenable to either way. I think you know, it's still a fairly small number of buildings at this size, just because, you know, 500,000 square feet is still fairly large. But I think to Alderwoman Sonier's point, you know, just to leave it open, you know, at the request of the Director of Operations was my initial intent there. So, and to follow that recommendation.
all righty. All right, well, if there's no other questions or concerns, then I guess we'll invite you to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In closing, I would just say I'm really grateful to the city folks. I'm sorry, there's some activity behind me. I'm just really grateful to the building commissioner and Matt Moak over in our city councilor's office and our administration. And I should add, the president's office was also amenable here. I believe, I shouldn't speak for that, but just everybody who weighed in advance as we got the bill kind of drafted really quickly to try and shore up the building, and just everyone who's been extremely responsive. I have to give a shout out to Isaiah, my legislative aide, and also Deanna Murphy.
I'm sorry, Alderwoman, your volume has gone out.
Would just ask for your favorable consideration here, and thank you for considering the bill.
Okay, with that, I'll accept the motion for Board Bill 123.
I make a motion that we pass Board Bill 123 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye,
Aye.
Alderman Browning,
Aye.
Chair Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
All right, congratulations, Alderwoman Spencer. You successfully passed Board Bill 123 with a due pass recommendation.
Thank
you. Okay. Moving right along, Board Bill number 103, Alderman Browning.
Thank you, Chair. I am not looking to have a hearing on 103 today. We are looking to postpone that to November.
Okay. All right, well, that being said, originally on this agenda, per some conversations, I thought that we were gonna hear another bill as well as Alderman Browning's bill, which were gonna be first before Board Bill 131, and there's a time period that they were allotted CDA because they had another engagement they had to be in. So we're going to go into a recess for about 15 minutes and come back to hear Board Bill 131. All righty, we will continue with the agenda now with Board Bill 131. Before I turn it over to my Vice Chair, Sanye, I would like to ask that we put the committee sub before us. It's in the Drive 131 committee sub. So we'll have to accept the motion for us to put Board Bill 131 committee sub before us.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Make a motion to place the committee substitute to Board Bill 131.
Make a motion that we place committee substitute to Board Bill 131 before us.
Second.
Previous roll.
All right, thank you so much. Now, with Board Bill 131 committee sub before us, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice Chair, Sanye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk Hubbard. I will let you start out with just an opening to just kind of, explain everything.
Okay, thank you so much. Madam Clerk, can you read the summary, please?
A board bill recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to submit a 2024 annual action plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, authorizing the director and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute agreements with HUD for the receipt of 2024 Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships American Rescue Plan Program, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS funds, appropriating CDBG, Home ARP, HOPWA, and ESG grant funds, authorizing the directors of the Community Development Administration, Department of Human Services, and the Department of Health to negotiate and execute contracts as may be necessary to expend funds and contain emergency clause.
Great, thank you so much. So this is the bit, this is annual what we do, and we are responsible rather for playing this part, but there are also a lot of other parts that we as other people are not responsible for. Everybody knows I'm big on facts and not having misinformation, create narratives that would hinder a lot of the work that we're trying to do and that we are responsible for doing down here. So with that, before we start into the bill, I would like to have a presentation, an introduction and a presentation from our CDA director, Mr. Pfeffer.
Thank you, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time today. I do have some slides prepared, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go over the bill before you today. Can you all see my screen here? Great. Agenda for this presentation, just going to provide a little bit of background about CDA and this process before providing an overview about the board bill itself, and Exhibit 1, our funding recommendations, and then happy to take any questions. So background about CDA, we serve as a clearinghouse for HUD and now also for American Rescue Plan Act funds for the city of St. Louis. We are charged by Mayor Jones with deploying these funds to drive economic justice by funding affordable housing production and provision of social services and various other miscellaneous activities. A really important piece of history for context about this bill that does come annually before HUD's is that CDA was founded in 1974 to administer the funds appropriated in this bill, CDBG and home funds, which were established pursuant to the Housing and Community Development Act. And it actually originally included the Planning Commission, the Office of Business Development, and a variety of other entities until SLDC was spun off in 1988, the Planning Department was spun off in 1999, and the Affordable Housing Commission was established in 2001. But CDA always retained this core responsibility of administering CDBG and home funds, and came to also administer other HUD formula funds like the Emergency Solutions Grant and HOPWA. But what happened was that essentially a HUD monitoring visit in 2012 found that the alderman, frankly, to be transparent with you all, had taken over the program essentially from CDA and were making allocations independently of an open and competitive selection process. And that's why there was a meeting in the Kennedy Room where HUD staff brought in members of the HUD's committee and essentially said, here's how the new process will work. CDA will conduct an RFP to identify the recipients of funds, and then those projects will go through this board bill process. And so this is part of what HUD calls our citizen participation process. We welcome comments and input, but there is a kind of limit, frankly, to the granularity of the changes that the Board of Aldermen can make. And specifically, HUD does not want to see the Board of Aldermen selecting specific grantees. With that, a little bit about the formula grant program process. So the funds appropriated in this bill, which I'll go over momentarily, but CDBG, Home ARP, ESG, and HOPWA are all what are called formula grants. What a formula grant is, it's not a grant that we need to apply for. It's one that is awarded by formula to cities across the country, including St. Louis. And so the process for these funds is that we put together a 5-year plan, essentially telling HUD, here are our objectives. Here's what we want to accomplish with these funds. Next, we produce annual action plans. And that is every year, 45 days before the year. So in our case, November 15th, we have to submit to HUD, here's the specific programs and projects that we are going to be funding, in this case in 2024, in order to meet the objectives identified in our consolidated plan. And as we put together both the consolidated plan and the action plan, we have to conduct hearings and RFP, and we need this appropriation as well. And I should note, by the way, that we are heading into our 5-year consolidated planning process because that plan is due November 15th, the 2025 to 2029 plan is due November 15th, 2024. So we have issued an RFP and actually selected LISC to support us in putting together that consolidated plan. Once we submit the action plan, then we enter into a grant agreement between HUD and the city. And this ordinance also authorizes us to enter into that grant agreement. And then once we actually perform the activities throughout the course of 2024, 90 days after the end of that year, we submit a consolidated action plan performance report, a CAPER that details, here are all the outputs that these programs generated. Here's how we're progressing towards the objectives in our consolidated plan. So that's kind of zooming out about the process. Now being very specific about the 2024 annual action plan, because this bill is our annual action plan bill that appropriates the funds that we're going to deploy in 2024 and authorizes us to submit the action plan to HUD and enter into a grant agreement with HUD. And so as you can see, we started by conducting a public hearing regarding our funding priorities in July 21st, 2023. Then we issued an RFP on August 7th. Which was closed on September 7th. And then we reviewed those applications. Every application received at least 3 ratings, and we awarded all applications that scored over 90 points on the rating, as well as all applications that we had previously funded that scored above 85 points. And we'll go over the specific projects and programs that we're funding later on in this presentation. We posted this set of funding recommendations and the annual action plan for public comment on Friday, when the board bill was also introduced. And now we're holding this committee meeting this week. And from here, we hope for your favorable consideration so that we can submit the final 2023 annual action plan to HUD by November 15th, 2023. And there will also be another public hearing that we hold before that. So with that, just a little bit about what each of these funds are used for. CDBG funds need to fulfill at least one of 3 national objectives. They either need to benefit persons of low and moderate income, which is under 80% AMI, which in the city of St. Louis, an individual earning less than $53,000 is low to moderate income, and a family of 4 earning less than $75,000 is low to moderate income. Or alternatively, it can help us eliminate slums and blight, which does require a blighting study. Or finally, it can help us meet urgent needs. And there are special allocations with restricted uses that move outside of the annual action plan process and that have their own appropriations. We received about $13 million in CDBG CV funds, which were appropriated separately. And we are going to receive $25.8 million in CDBG DR, disaster relief funds, which will be appropriated separately, likely next year. We actually currently have a delegation from our HUD field office in our office providing some training to staff. And we also conducted an RFP, and this is in response to the 2022 flooding. And we conducted an RFP to select a consulting group to assist us in putting together what's called the unmet needs analysis for disaster relief. The unmet needs analysis is a really data-driven analysis that, first of all, estimates the total damage done by the flooding, then subtracts from that how much of that damage has been covered by insurance and by FEMA and other emergency response relief efforts, and then identifies the unmet need gap, which is what we are allowed to allocate disaster relief funds to. And while we are going to conduct a lengthy engagement process to identify the detailed priorities for disaster relief, we do have 3 kind of strategic pillars, which is 1, providing direct relief to families and households affected by the flooding. 2, building the city's operational capacity to respond to flooding. And 3, investing in flood mitigation efforts, including floodplain management and green infrastructure. But welcome comments, and that's going to be a long process that has nothing to do with this bill, but it's worth noting contextually. Home funds are formula funds that can only be used to provide housing to benefit persons of low and moderate income. And home ARP funds, which is a special $10.6 million allocation of home funds, which is appropriated in this bill, is set aside even more specifically for 4 qualifying populations: those who are unhoused, at risk of becoming unhoused, victims of domestic violence, and individuals struggling with substance abuse or other mental health issues. This bill also appropriates ESG and HOPWA funds. Emergency Solutions Grant dollars are administered by the Department of Human Services and used to provide unhoused individuals with basic shelter and essential supportive services. I will note that last year, or rather in 2022, because we're still in program year 2023, but in 2022, DHS, in partnership with over 9 shelter providers, including Gateway 180, Peter and Paul, St. Martha's Hall, Covenant House, and others, use these funds to provide shelter to 1,400 adults and 358 children. In addition, HOPWA funds, housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, are administered by the Department of Health, also appropriated through this bill, and last year funded Doorways and Peter and Paul to house 718 individuals. Again, just to recap, essentially the text of the bill authorizes CDA and the city of St. Louis to submit our 2024 annual action plan, to enter into a grant agreement with HUD covering the following funds: community development block grant funds, home funds, emergency solution grant dollars, HOPWA, and home ARP funds. With that, here's just a little scattershot of a bunch of the nonprofit entities that we fund with these resources, as well as many of the municipal and local public bodies that we fund with these resources. And now let's get into more detail on the funding recommendations themselves. And just the framework for it is that we allocated over $4 million to public services, over $2 million to interim assistance, which is primarily LRA lot maintenance, as well as a new program, which I will flag. Over $2 million for homeowner assistance, including home repair. $8.6 million for housing construction and rehabilitation, $610,000 for economic development, $4 million for public improvements, and over $4 million for planning and administration. And something that I want to highlight here is that this includes, on top of the funds mentioned earlier, which are our 2024 formula funds, this also includes an additional $4,996,000 of funds that we are reprogramming because they are currently attached to contracts that are no longer viable or projects that are no longer viable. Some of these date back to 2013, 2014, 2016, which is why we are reprogramming them here. And that is called out in Exhibit 1. You'll see a column labeled 2024 Substantial Amendment, and that substantial amendment is also available online. So now to go into even more detail, and the Alderwoman Clark Hubbard asked me to include every single funded project in this presentation to ensure transparency, and I completely agree. So I hope you'll have a little bit of patience for me, but I'll try to move through it quickly as well, and happy to answer any more specific questions about specific projects. But we are funding a significant amount of youth services, more than ever before, in fact. And this includes Big Brothers Big Sisters, it includes Employment Connection, it includes Jean Slave Boys and Girls Club for after-school programming, Guardian Angel Settlement Association, Mission St. Louis, and actually two more, Slate and the Youth and Family Center. We also continue to fund the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Expanded Recreation Program. And we are, for the first time, awarding CDBG funds to expand the Gateway Go program, which, as you may recall, was initially funded with ARPA funds. And these funds will allow us to maintain it, hopefully in perpetuity, or at least for a longer time. Not that these funds alone will do that, but the nice thing about CDBG is that it provides annual funding. So our hope is that we can extend it past 2024 with these HUD funds. And as a reminder, Gateway Go is a program that provides free public transit passes to young people between the ages of 14 and I believe it's 25. In addition, and I'll also share in terms of context that last year, or again, last program year in 2022, our youth service, our CDBG funded youth services provided after school, summer school, and case management services to over 1,600 young people, low to moderate income young people in the city. We're also continuing to fund city services with City Seniors, as well as the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging. And they do really, both of these entities do incredible work. And last year provided meals, transit, and other services to 1,500 seniors in the city of St. Louis. We're also continuing to fund food access. These are primarily food pantry projects with Carondelet Community Betterment Federation, City Seniors Incorporated, Food Outreach, as well as Guardian Angel Settlement Association. And it looks like Food Outreach is there twice, excuse us. But again, for context, last year, these programs provided food service meals to over 1,200 low to moderate income city residents. We're also providing, in partnership with the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency and Tower Grove Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, fair housing services to combat housing discrimination and expand access to housing, as well as we continue to fund the Problem Property Team, which is doing amazing work in partnership with the building division, LRA, and others to go after problem landlords and irresponsible property owners, as was partially detailed regarding Board Bill 123. In addition, we're expanding our investments into unhoused services and shelter services in particular. And these programs detailed here provided shelter services and supportive housing to 342 residents last year, including 97 unhoused youth. And you can see the list here includes Covenant House, Gateway Homeless Services, Hope House, Doorways, St. Patrick's Center, and St. Patrick's Center. I should note, by the way, that Gateway Homeless Services is a new grantee that we haven't funded previously, as was Gateway Go, and as is the Transitional Living Program with Covenant House, Missouri. We're also funding reentry services, including the Criminal Justice Ministry's housing and rental support program, as well as Employment Connections job training program. And then we're providing additional job training funding to Employment Connections New Green Jobs program, Employment Connections Competitive Employment Program, Launch Code, which we are funding for the first time. And I'm really excited about this project, A, because it rated incredibly strongly, but B, because we also supported the construction of their new center on Delmar, investing $500,000 into that. And so I think this is a really great opportunity for us to deepen that investment and support some of those operations as well. We continue to support Mission St. Louis's job training program, as well as the Urban League's job training program, as well as St. Patrick's Center job training program. And these last year provided job training services and placements to over 500 city residents. We're also continuing to fund beautification activities, including with Operation Brightside, SLACO's Keeping It Clean Neighborhood Beautification Initiative, and again, even though Seed St. Louis, which has done great work with us in the past, we did not fund them last year. Really excited to be able to fund them again this year because they really have invested in the expansion or establishment of dozens of community gardens and orchards across the city. Another new program that we are standing up with the Department of Health is a maternal health resources and services program. And the Department of Health will be issuing an RFP later this year to find a program administrator or identify a partner for that. And essentially the vision involves a program to get resources, perhaps baby boxes or other services and educational resources, as well as material resources to low to moderate income mothers and expecting mothers in the city of St. Louis. We're also continuing to fund these two excellent residential leadership training programs with SLACO and the Urban League's Federation of Block Units program. And that brings us to a conclusion or summarizes our total public services investment. In addition to that, we're also continuing to support the Land Reutilization Authority with $1.7 million in lot maintenance supports. And this is on top of the $6.5 million in ARPA, which we have allocated to them as well. And then a new program, which we were asked to stand up in part based on feedback that we received from community as we've conducted these large neighborhood transformation and other grant cycles over the past year, is creating an opportunity for smaller awards that are parcel specific and really designed for neighborhoods and just folks with a little less capacity. And so what these would be grants of up to $10,000, really designed to, it could be anything from a mural to another way to activate vacant parcels. One really foundational kind of document to this is the Vacancy Collaborative's Vacancy to Vibrancy book, which includes actually 10 sample projects of rain gardens, butterfly gardens, and other types of projects that you can explore in order to activate vacant parcels. Now turning over to the housing side of our work. We are continuing to work with the Housing Partnership to provide down payment assistance. This is on top of work that we are doing with SLDC to provide even larger down payment assistance awards, and that will be launching soon. In addition, the city of where we continue to work with the building division in Mission St. Louis to administer our Healthy Home Repair program. And I'm going to provide a little bit more detail on that in this slide because I know it's always a priority, and it is a priority for CDA as well. And just some basic statistics, you can see that in 2022 we served 155 homeowners through this program. We've served 282 homeowners to date in 2023, and so we are working aggressively to expand the program. You can see at the bottom that we've spent significantly more already this year than we did all of last year. And that's really due to the influx of ARPA funds, which have allowed us to not only scale the program, but also to accelerate the program because they don't require Section 106 historic and environmental review. And also because we've made them grants. Conditional grants instead of forgivable loans, which also accelerates the closing process as it does not require a deed of trust on the property. We still, however, the need outstrips our capacity. We have 981 residents on our waiting list, and our biggest constraint remains contractor capacity. We have expanded our bench of contractors from about 50 to currently about 70, but the fact remains that with all the new construction going on, most contractors would prefer to be on a new construction site rather than in someone's basement or kitchen. We're also, however, we continue to expand our bench of contractors and encourage any alderman that knows contractors to connect them to us. And we have an RFQ open in perpetuity with Mission St. Louis. We're also working on an online intake portal, which should launch in early 2024 to accelerate the process, which to date has been solely paper-based. And we're also in partnership with the Home Repair Network to identify other opportunities to streamline and improve our processes. We also have a minor home repair program with Harambe, Mission St. Louis, and Employment Connection, which is primarily ARPA funded. The reason for that is because, as I alluded to earlier, HUD funds require environmental and historic reviews, which are extremely time consuming and really are a bad fit for these minor home repairs, grab bars, lights, minor carpentry, etc. And we're also continuing our lead abatement program. With that, I'll turn now to housing construction and rehab. We are allocating $5.5 million towards affordable housing production and preservation. And these funds, along with, on top of that, about $9 million in home ARP funds, will all be allocated to developers through CDA's 2024 Spring Housing Production NOFA, which will launch in early February. On top of that, we've allocated $2 million directly to the Housing Authority to bring offline public housing units online. I was just talking to Alana about this. Well, we've been talking about it for a long time, but I saw it today as well. And it's really enormously exciting because these are 127 units that need to be turned, but each unit requires between $10,000 and $20,000 worth of work, whether it's furnishings or appliances, new appliances, or what have you, or new coat of paint. And these funds are one of the best bang for the buck in terms of investment to unit that we can bring back online. And of course, as these are public housing, they will go to individuals who the Public Housing Authority has prioritized to access public housing, which is in particular individuals who are unhoused or at risk of becoming unhoused or extremely low income. And then we also have some of CDA's admin costs here. I've included some tables that many of the aldermen have seen before and that I won't dwell on, but that just articulates the staggering need for investments into affordable housing as diverse as our city. Because you see that there's extraordinary need both among owners, where we have 14,000 cost burden owners who can't keep up with the property taxes, mortgage, or maintenance on their homes. And we also have about 36,000 tenants tenant households that are immensely cost burdened, with the vast majority of that cost burden falling on those under 30% AMI. And that population are really the folks who are most housing insecure, most at risk of eviction, most at risk of becoming unhoused. With that, I want to say just a few words quickly about our housing production process and pipeline. We are, as I alluded to, going to be issuing our next, we awarded about $20 million in affordable housing awards about a month ago, a combination of ARPA, CDBG, and home funds, which collectively are supporting the production of 952 units on top of our previous awards. We're going to be issuing another housing production NOFA in February 2024, as I mentioned, in particular awarding home ARP funds and the $5.5 million described earlier. That process to select those while the NOFA is open and while we're reviewing responses takes about 4 to 6 months. Pre-development then at its fastest takes 6 to 12 months, although we are exploring a variety of options to accelerate that process. Including conceptually pre-approved designs, although that's a ways down the road. And then finally, construction, which can take, depending on the project, anywhere from 9 months to really, it can be 2 years as well with large multifamily projects, although it can also move faster. Also want to say a word about how dramatically our housing production pipeline has expanded in the past year between awards from CDA, awards from SLDC, and this does not include upcoming awards from the Affordable Housing Commission. In 2022, we had 148 for sale homes in the production pipeline. Today, we have 210 for sale homes in the production pipeline. In 2022, we had 377 rental units in the production pipeline. Today, we have nearly 2,500 rental units in the production pipeline. And I also want to contrast this to the period between 2015 and 2019. Between 2015 and 2019, the city funded a total of about 1,200 affordable units. Of those, about 39 were under 30% AMI and 65 were for sale housing. Today, again, we're supporting the production of over 2,500 units, including 210 for sale homes and over 500 units of housing under 30% AMI. I should note that a lot of this is driven by an unprecedented level of success in our LIHTC rounds. Whereas historically, we received 2 or 3 projects as a city. The last 2 years, we've received 7 and 6 projects respectively. So these 13 projects alone represent a bulk of this expansion. And we have MHDC visiting the city again next week and are excited to continue that deep partnership. Next, we've got our public improvements and awards under this category, and this is capital awards include Habitat for Humanity, which is going to be investing into the sidewalks and into the streetscape of Hyde Park and Old North. And this is as part of their investment through CDA and SLDC into the production of over 20 for sale homes, affordable for sale homes in Hyde Park and Old North. Additionally, we are supporting Cornerstone Community Development Corporation establishment of a community space at 5908 Etzel, as well as food pantry improvements for Operation Food Search, support for the Favored Foundation to develop and build an early childcare center, which will have 40 slots in the West End, as well as one priority, as all the members of the board know, is recreation center improvements, and in particular roof replacements for many of our rec centers. And these funds will intertwine with $2.5 million in ARPA funds to replace the roofs and provide other needed improvements at rec centers across the city. And then finally, we're supporting Jubilee Community Development Corporation's redevelopment of Elliott School into a wellness center with a particular focus on individuals struggling with substance abuse and in particular with opiates. Finally, we continue to support SLDC's Facade and Public Improvements Program, as well as Justine Peterson's microenterprise loan program. And then finally, we support a variety of planning and administration programs, including the City Councilor's Office, which supports all the work that we do at CDA, our CDA staff, the Comptroller's Office, the Planning Department, SLDC, and in particular, we are awarding some additional funds this year for Project Connect planning to SLDC. So with that covers all of our all of Exhibit 1 and the funding recommendations contained therein. I'll stop sharing my screen and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I forgot I was chairing for a brief second. We can go in order of seniority. So Alderman Cone, did you have any questions for the bill sponsor or for Mr. Pfeiffer?
I do, Madam Chair, but if I'll allow the other folks of the committee to go through their questions, and if you could come back to me, I would appreciate it.
Okay, Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that very thorough presentation. And it looks like just a lot of different things moving forward in the city of St. Louis. Can you remind me, can you put up the slide again about how much overall is being spent here?
Yes, absolutely. One moment.
Thank you.
I'm worried I closed it, so you're going to have to give me just a moment.
Oh no, it's gone.
Share with the board afterwards.
Oh, here it is. Is this the slide you're referring to?
Yes, I think so. Thank you very much. And I know we have a copy of this in our drive, I would imagine already. Wonderful. Thank you. I learned a lot from the presentation. You went through it really in really a very detailed way. And I don't think I have any further questions, just besides seeing it all kind of laid out all together. And thanks so much for your time putting this together.
Of course, and I'll just note, I was going to say for clarity, but it adds a layer of complication, but it's more accurate. Just that this doesn't include $4.996 million, which are not in the 2024 annual action plan, but are being reprogrammed pursuant to a substantial amendment. But the funding recommendations that I went over does include that $4.996 million.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Alderman Browning.
Thank you for that presentation. Alderwoman Schweitzer is right. It was very thorough. We appreciate that. I'll definitely be going back to refer to it later as well. I don't have any questions at this time.
Excellent. Looks like we're back to you, Alderman Cone.
I'm here. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Can you just run by the Alderman or Alderwoman Schweitzer's question again, Director Pfeffer?
Of course, I'll reshare my screen as well. Alderwoman Schweitzer asked me to provide the kind of highest level overview of all the funds that are being appropriated through this bill. And that is this slide that covers all of the funds being appropriated in this bill. In addition to that, there are $4.996 million in funds that have been previously appropriated, but are being reprogrammed pursuant to a substantial amendment. And I included that in this presentation so that the Board of Aldermen is informed, but those funds were previously appropriated back in as far back as 2013, 2014, 2016.
Right, but do those need to go through the appropriation process again?
They do not, because there's language in each of these bills that enables us to reprogram funds pursuant to HUD's substantial amendment process.
Okay, and so where is that 4.1 million going now?
That is detailed in your exhibit. We included it for your information. It's not called out specifically in this presentation, but if you provide me a moment, I can pull up the bill and show you exactly the projects that it's going towards.
Yeah, so I'm in the committee substitute of the bill. It seems as though the total amount appropriated and the committee substitute is the same as the total amount that was appropriated in the original bill.
So if you see in the exhibit, the CDBG proposed substantial amendment, that
I'm looking at
details
that now.
exactly. And so you'll see at the bottom of everything, in fact, that it sums the totals. And so the funds that are appropriated in this bill are that 18.283 million for CDBG and 3.142 million for home. It does not appropriate the 4.996 million in substantial amended funds. And we did discuss this with the city councilor's office and inquired as to whether the funds would need to be reappropriated, and they advised against it.
I think
Okay, I'm just going through each of these allocations at this point, so. And this does not include some of the recent announcements that were made for the ARPA. This is just the CDBG, the home funding,
That's correct, Alderman.
and the other programs. Okay. Sorry, my screen is going a little wonky on me here. So with respect to the housing component here, I believe I saw in the presentation that you provided that these are going to organizations like St. Patrick's Center.
So that would be our unhoused public services. The actual housing production funds will be, with the exception of the $2 million for the St. Louis Housing Authority, will be allocated or awarded to developers pursuant to a notice of funding availability, which will be issued in early February.
Yeah, can you pull that part of your presentation back up? I thought I had captured that, but I'm not coming across it.
Absolutely.
And where are we at with respect to caps? Because I remember like public services and administration had like caps on the amount of CDBG dollars that we were allowed to have.
That's exactly right, and we are to the dollar at that cap. We have allocated the maximum amount of public services and planning and administration dollars that we are legally allowed to. And I will note that the reprogramming of funds has been essential in terms of allowing us to expand our investment slightly into public services. I'll also add that we would very much like to be able to go above the public services cap by having a HUD-approved neighborhood revitalization strategy area, or multiple neighborhood revitalization strategy areas in North and South St. Louis. To date, HUD has not approved that neighborhood revitalization strategy area. And in fact, the city has not had HUD-approved neighborhood revitalization strategy areas since 2019.
Why is that?
I can't speak to that. I can tell you that it has been a priority for us, and that we have struggled we've gone back and forth with HUD over the creation of a new neighborhood revitalization strategy area. Our position is that we believe that such a geography should be quite broadly defined, in part because it creates significant administrative burdens, because programs must, only the portion of a program within a neighborhood revitalization strategy area can be excluded from the public services cap. So you want a program to be solely within the NERSA. And therefore, if it's a really tight geographic area, that makes it really difficult for the program. So our position is that, frankly, the entire city could probably be a neighborhood revitalization strategy area, and certainly a very broad swath of the city could be, whereas HUD's position is pushing us to be much more narrow. And we worry that such a narrowly targeted or tailored neighborhood revitalization strategy area might actually pose more administrative burdens than it solves. So that is the gist of the dialogue that we are engaging with in HUD, and we're trying to resolve that issue, and very much hope to have it resolved by the next funding cycle. In any case, this is the allocation of housing that is detailed in Exhibit 1. It does not include the $10.6 million in home ARP funds, which are appropriated in this bill, but are not in Exhibit 1. And then here are the kind of process and projects details that I provided earlier as well. And go ahead.
I'm sorry, specifically though, for the unhoused community.
For the unhoused community, that's under public services. So that's
Right. So do we have, for both of these actually, for housing production and then for the public services component, I know there's a reluctance to, do mapping in terms of, addresses and things of that nature, but is there like a heat map that we can produce that would show where dollars are being invested in our communities or in our city?
I've not seen such a map. We could certainly explore and figure out a way to put something like that together, and would be happy to work with you on that. To clarify, are you only interested in seeing a heat map of the unhoused component or of all of our awards? Sorry, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
I did not do that. No, for housing production as well.
We can certainly do that for housing production, and in fact, for all of our awards. We have produced maps of our neighborhood transformation grant and other awards. We have not gotten to do it for these awards just yet, but we can certainly provide that to you, Alderman.
Someone keeps muting me. I'm not exactly sure who. Okay, that would be helpful. I would really appreciate it. Otherwise, I don't think I have any other questions at this point.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I think that was a very thorough presentation. I'm especially excited to hear about the exponential increase in housing production pipeline. I know that's not an easy feat, and in some cases you went from 377 to the 1,000. So that's incredibly impressive, and it sounds like great work is being done. If there's no other questions from any committee members, I'm going to pass it back to Alderwoman Clark Hubbard to close.
If I may comment on that, Alderwoman Saulnier, we have an amazing team, and I in particular want to emphasize the partnerships that we have with SLDC and the Affordable Housing Commission and the great work they do, as those numbers that I shared are citywide numbers.
Excellent. And then I know you said this is in the draft. If it's helpful, we can also email it to committee members if that's helpful, this presentation, so it's directly in you all's inboxes. And then I will pass it to Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Madam Clerk, I'm not sure if we had any speakers or public signed ups.
We do not have any speakers.
Okay. All right, I'm definitely going to be sharing this information. Thank you so much. Will there be, because one of the things that I like that you all have done are the tutorial, the webinars that you've been doing. So I know for me specifically, one of the biggest questions I'm going to get is about the formerly known as Healthy Home Repair Program and the funds for, again, people that have stayed the course in their homes and want to be able to apply and access into those programs. Will there be something forthcoming with that?
We will absolutely continue to hold our trainings. Those are typically geared towards our nonprofit subrecipients, but I'd be happy to collaborate with you and any other alderpersons interested in holding a training on healthy home repair. I think that would be valuable in part because what often happens is that, for example, we recently took 300 folks off our waiting list and sent out these letters, and our response rate is unfortunately pretty low. About 30 or 35%, in part because sometimes people have been on the waiting list for a long time. And so anything we can do to provide support to folks as they navigate this process is something that I'd love to collaborate with you on, and a training would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, please sign me up. I'm publicly saying that now. And I know my colleagues will be on board because all of us, I'm sure, have constituents that can benefit from that. I don't I guess have any questions for myself. So with that, or you, because I've been studying it. With that, I will close with asking my colleagues for a favorable consideration and a due pass recommendation for Board Bill 131 committee sub.
Madam Chair, I would move that we pass Board Bill 131 committee substitute out with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
righty. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. And Karen, you can go ahead and take the reins back.
Okay, we'll pick back up on the agenda. Any resolutions for review?
We have none.
Okay, committee discussion,
We have none.
acknowledgement of any written testimonies,
We have none.
announcements,
We have none.
okay, that's for us colleagues, I don't know. I was thinking maybe Alderwoman Sanye might want to make an announcement or anything, but
Oh, you're good with what we discussed?
well, we're working on it, but I didn't know if you wanted to just let people know that we're working on the things that you're.
Yes, I can just share that we are working on hopefully setting up a time to hear the Board Bill 126, Board Bill 127, and 128. Of course, there'll be multiple hearings, but we're working to get one scheduled next week. So as soon as we solidify a time for that, we will make sure that we get that. We ran into some issues with just the Kennedy room and some technology not quite being ready, but we are working on getting that together so we can have that hearing and it can be as accessible as possible.
All right, thank you so much. We don't have any excused members. Our members were present. So with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone have a blessed day.
Thank you.